Hi there, Let's Talk Sports fans. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of our Let's Talk Sports Roundtable. And I'm joined by Mikey, podcaster. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, Dan, thanks for having me on here, man. It's 6:30 a.m. on a Friday, and I can't think of a better way to start it. So I got my decaf fired up, and we're ready to go.
Yeah, trust me. I know the feeling with the time difference. I do shows from pretty much early in the morning to like 1 in the morning. The nature of the time difference and so forth. So, yeah,
Dedicated to your craft. That's a good thing.
yeah, definitely. The worst thing is when you wait for 1 a.m. to fit in with the evening and then someone doesn't turn up, which is
Oh,
often the case, which obviously I'm fine to work around someone, but obviously if someone don't show up, it's frustrating to say the least at 1 a.m. So
I bet.
as everyone knows, I'm always trying to add new voices to the community. Me and Mikey are connected on Twitter, and if he likes the vibe, he might be coming on in some shape or form into the team. But most of all, we're just going to talk his content. So, Mikey, I know you do a lot of fantasy content. If you tell everyone a little bit about your content, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for the opportunity, Dan. Man, where do I even begin, right? It's funny that this conversation, this opportunity comes up. So I actually just like a month ago, 6 weeks ago, dove 100% into this. It's called Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. My wife made this cool shirt, which I've been wearing every day for the last like 4 weeks. Kidding, but um, it's a passion of mine that roots all the way back to when I was a child. Like I literally I used to take those NFL football pencils. I don't know if you remember seeing those, but I used to take those and like close my eyes and twirl them in my hand and drop a team and write down who the winner was. And anyway, my passion for football goes all the way back. And in March, I actually quit my job to go all in on this business. The reason for that is a specific tool that I create over my website is basementbrewedff.com. I create a lot of content, a lot of tools and resources for fantasy football players to help them win. To put it as short as possible, they help them win. But yeah, if you head over to the website, there's going to be a lot that you find over there, including one of my most popular tools that kind of exploded with popularity on Reddit and Twitter, which kind of gave me the confidence to dive into this. But it's something that helps people set their lineups, right? That nagging, who do I start? Who do I leave on my bench? Should I choose Tom Brady? Should I choose Aaron Rodgers? Who do I go with? I created a tool that's significantly different than rankings. It's different than projections. It's a matchup analyzer that kind of shows you here's exactly what Tom Brady's matchup looks like. Here's exactly what Aaron Rodgers' matchup looks like. That helps you make a really educated and confident decision when making those calls. So that's kind of the main bread and butter, but there's a lot of other tools out there that we're working with and content on YouTube and Twitter and Reddit. And we're kind of all over the place at this point.
Jim, I know the feeling. I'm going to be honest. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube is as much as I can cope with. We do also air on Roku, but I can't even delve into TikTok mostly because I don't fully understand it. And
You're not doing that. You're not out there like doing all the TikTok dances, Dan.
that definitely not. And to be honest with you, I struggle to keep up with everything else. And it sounds like your community's much like mine. I'm going to be honest. Let's Talk Sports pretty much runs 24/7 between the shows. Obviously, to help the shows, you have to be active on social media, which is a full time job. We do try to be as active as possible, sort of engaging with the community. So it sounds like a similar type thing. Was there something what made you want to get into the content creating? Was it just to have fun talking fantasy football for the most part?
Yeah. Oh, man, that is such a great question. And again, that kind of roots all the way back to my childhood. So I told you about the pencil game that I used to
Yeah,
play, but I also used to, I don't know, I had to be like 10 or 11 years old, and I used to play Madden, the video game Madden. It had to
yeah,
be Madden 97, 98, 99, and I would play a game, and then I would immediately walk over to my grandpa's typewriter of all things, and I would type an article, like a news article of like, here's the stats, who played well, here's what happened, game breakdown. So like football has always been a passion, but writing, like being a writer, has always been a strength and a passion of mine. In fact, my very first job out of college over a decade ago was as a content writer. Now, it wasn't sports focused, it was about like financial and insurance topics in America, which is like nowhere near as fun as or exciting as writing about sports. So I just kind of casually had like a blog for a while that I would occasionally contribute to, and time would pass and I wouldn't really put much in there. And then I started publishing this tool, which I'm happy to share in any capacity if that helps anybody. But I started publishing this lineup setting tool on Reddit, and it just exploded, and it kind of gave me the confidence and the light bulb moment in my head to realize, oh my gosh, this is something that's valuable, this is something that people want to see. And like I said, in March, I was actually at a water park with my son. And this is, I've been thinking about starting this business and diving all in for a long time, but I just could never do it, right? I can never quit my comfy corporate job and go back to zero and start a new business. I just couldn't pull the trigger, right? And I was at a water park with my son back in March, and he was terrified to go down this water slide. And I kept telling him, like, buddy, you got to go. You got to go down the slide. It's going to be the funnest thing you ever do. And at some point I told him, buddy, like sometimes the most important thing that you can do in your life is the thing that scares you the most. And in that moment, I realized I was talking to myself, and I realized, oh my God, like I have to take this chance. I have to go all in and give it a shot. Otherwise, several decades from now, hopefully several decades from now, I could be on my deathbed and regretting, not taking the chance. So it's just kind of my journey led me to this point where I'm combining my life experience of writing and sales and marketing with my passion for football and my passion for fantasy football. So I want to help as many people as I possibly can, and have fun while doing it, and keep it casual, keep it light, and keep a fun vibe.
yeah. It's pretty much that's exactly the vibe we go for in this community. I've spoke quite openly about. It took me a while to take the leap to go into podcasting because obviously sports try and point to me as someone what's completely housebound through disabilities. Obviously, sports is my connection with the outside world, and um, obviously, then it was bringing up the confidence to go on air, and over time, Let's Talk Sports has evolved from just me talking about random sport news to our own shows. Obviously, people will have their own networks join in, and even a couple of ex NFL players have liked what coming on and joined. So,
Very cool.
it's funny getting pushed into the area. Sort of, you often need that push, much like you, and it's going fairly well, and I think it'll be a good fit. But I guess this brings us on to we've talked about your content, and anyone that do want to check out Mikey's stuff, we will post in the group page. And obviously, we'll probably, should you want to come back, have you guest on my fantasy show. Let's talk fantasy football. And my co-host is far more knowledgeable than I am about fantasy football. He runs his own page, Fantasy Football for the People. Ryan, essentially, he's the expert, and I tried to talk about it from a footballing point of view, and we kind of think that works where he can obviously give the numbers, and I just tried to keep up and sort of talk
Sure.
just from a footballing point of view, what I think what players will do what, and I think that kind of works rather than having two people what just talk statistics. We sort of both say it's different to a lot of fantasy shows. So
Yeah.
I can't speak highly enough of Ryan's. sort of expertise. I'm a firm believer in if you don't know about something, you bring someone in
Who
what
does?
does. I'd never played fantasy football before last year. It's not as big in the UK until recently, and I reached out to a few people, and um, Ryan was the one what I sort of connected with most. I can't speak highly enough of his page. Obviously, I did have some people like with quite a big following in fantasy football, but it's almost like it seemed like they're doing you a favour. So I sort of when I reach out to people, I want people what it's sort of easy going, and it's not like they're doing you a favour. You're sort of helping each other, and it's
Yep.
just an easy going conversation. So we'll probably have you on the show at some point if
Yeah.
you'll be keen. We also run our own fantasy league, so we're just working out plans to that because with it being the first year, it it went well and ran well, but there weren't much interaction with the community. Some people just joined, and what I want the fantasy league to be is like when teams match up, there's that conversation. Because if
Yep.
it's to help the community and to be a community tool, you don't want someone's friend what joined but just never interact. So I've got a few different changes this year, and
Sure.
hopefully it'll be a bit more interactive. So the Packers, Mikey, how do you feel? Obviously, no Davante Adams now. I'm going to be honest. I was surprised they weren't a bit more aggressive and adding playmakers in the draft. I know they added Christian Watson, and I was a big fan of his, but they're a contender. If they're like someone what's like still building, Christian Watson has to be ready to go, and I think he's going to be a very good player in this league. But I think he might take maybe half a season to adjust a little bit, like all rookies do. But how do you feel about post Davante Adams Packers, Mikey?
Oh man, it's too early to think about Davante Adams in a Raiders jersey, but I am feeling admittedly still confident. Anytime you have number 12, anytime you have Aaron Rodgers throwing the pigskin around the field, you have a chance, right? And I totally agree. I do think they could have been more aggressive in the draft. However, I am very happy that, after what was it, 6 wide receivers flew off the board in the first 18 picks, they didn't panic and reach for a wide receiver. They, took 2 defensive players and they kind of let the draft come to them in the second round. I don't think they're done adding, by the way. I think it's very likely that they end up with 1 or maybe even 2 of Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, Will Fuller, or Jarvis Landry. The Christian Watson pick was fascinating for me as a Packers fan and a fantasy football analyst, because as a Packer fan, actually as both, as a Packer fan and as a fantasy football analyst, I was banging the table. I wanted Sky Moore, right? Kansas City Chiefs is where he ended up.
Yeah,
I wanted Sky Moore so bad. And then, the Packers obviously took Christian Watson early. They traded up to come get him, which in and of itself was a little bit frustrating because we traded, I think it was 53 and 58 to move up. And then Sky Moore ended up getting drafted at 54. So I was, in my head, I'm like, if the Packers would have just waited till 53, we could have got Sky Moore, who I wanted more than Christian Watson anyway. But the thing that I'll say about Christian Watson, and I actually wrote this in an article on my website, and you can call this clickbait if you want, but I actually compared him to Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? I knew Packers fans, a lot of Packers fans are Milwaukee Bucks fans, so they might love that comparison, but I think there's a lot of similarity there in that Christian Watson coming into this league he's probably going to be very raw. Like, there's a very big speed difference between playing in the Missouri Valley Conference in college versus the NFL, catching passes from Aaron Rodgers, who's known to be a bit of a perfectionist. You got to wonder how well those two will mesh with Christian Watson coming in and probably being raw and nowhere near as experienced as Davante. But athletically speaking, he is freakishly gifted. He athletically speaking, he could be the most talented wide receiver that Rodgers has ever played with. Don't take that to mean he's going to be better than Davante Adams or Jordy Nelson. Those guys are great football players, but I'm just speaking purely from an athletic standpoint. Watson has this rare size speed combo that can mesh incredibly well with Rodgers if, like you said, Dan, he's able to catch on quickly and catch on early. I think it's going to take time, and that's why I think they're going to go get somebody like Julio or Odell Beckham or Jarvis or Will Fuller. But the sky is the limit for Christian Watson. I'm just worried about how long it's going to take him to settle in.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not necessarily worried about the strength of the competition he faced in the long term for him, but I think he will just take some time. And conversing with some Packers fan after day one on the draft, they do mention the receivers went bang, 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 which I do understand. You don't want to take someone that's not worthy of that pick, so that's why they went defense. And I think there is an argument, even if there had been receivers there, they still would have done that. But even if you believe that, good front officers see when there's going to be a run coming and move up. And so that isn't necessarily an argument to me that they could have done something similar to what my team, the Jets, did and moved up to try the player you want. So to me, it's not they're saying they wanted a receiver, but they went earlier than they thought. That's a knock on them, and I'm not trying to throw fans. And to me, rather than moving up in the second round, if Watson was who they wanted, I think they could have got him, as you say, where they were.
Yep.
And what I think they should have done is, if they couldn't get that, someone like Chris Olave, for instance, or someone like that, they should have double dipped in the second round, Watson, and then one of either Sky Moore or Pickens, in my opinion. And then, obviously, if Watson takes a bit of time to come, you can almost get the production you need by numbers rather than the quality being there right away. So, to be honest with you, I think that was a bit of a mistake there that they didn't double dip just because it's so thin. So I don't know. Look, neither of us are GMs. That's just how I see it as a fan, and I think it's a good point about they're not done adding. To me, I'd rather add Odell Beckham Jr. or Jarvis Landry. I spoke about this on my fantasy show last night. Julio Jones needs to go to an offense where he won't necessarily have to get, say, 9 or 10 catches a game, maybe 4 catches a game, but like big plays, if you will. That's how he'll stay healthy. So that's not really what the Packers need. So to me, if you could, and I know it didn't work out in the Browns, I would try and add Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. because you can add Landry as the sort of veteran presence, and then Odell Beckham Jr. won't be ready straight away, but you're really signing him for the postseason anyway. So to me, I'd sign them both. They both have to probably take a bit lesser. Look, I know the cap is a situation, but you can just convert a signing bonus down the road. I think we all know the cap is a bit of a myth. You can make it work, especially if you add in 2 players.
100%. And I think the Rams are a good case study for that, right? Yeah. It always feels like the Rams are right up against the cap, and then all of a sudden they're signing Allen Robinson and they're getting all these guys. But yeah, I think it's funny that you mentioned that, right? I was all in. So when the offseason started, before the draft even began, but Davante Adams was out the door. In my mind, I was thinking, let's go buy 3 wide receivers. I wanted Julio on one side, Will Fuller on the other side, because there's there's the size, then you got the speed, and I wanted Jarvis Landry running around in the middle. Then they went and got Sammy Watkins, which I think made things a little bit more tricky in terms of who their next free agent wide receiver would be. But yeah, I mean, I still think Will Fuller would be a great addition to replace the speed of Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Not that that's a huge some big shoes to fill. But Will Fuller's obviously still very young, definitely an injury concern. But you know, honestly, as a Packer fan, if they can just come out of, if they can go into September with one or even two more of those guys, I'll feel really good about. I might even feel better about the Packers' chances this year than last year. Like, yes, they lost the best receiver in football, but if they can bring in, 2-3 respectable options, which they arguably haven't had for years, it's pretty much just been Davante Adams. Then you got Aaron Rodgers with multiple options, and I think that's scary for the rest of the league. So we'll see what happens. There's time for us to figure out who's going to come in.
Yeah, I agree. And let's be honest, you can't rule out them not doing something until roster cut down time and someone getting cut and they make a move. I think that's a Packers move more than anything. One last thing I wanted to ask you, so in the division, not necessarily even just this year, who are you most worried about going forward? To be honest with you, and some people might think this is funny, I kind of think the Lions, I don't think necessarily this year, but I think they are building something. Obviously, the Jameson Ravens could be a game changer, and they played hard almost every game last year.
They did, yeah.
Once they get the talent there, I think they could be a dangerous team. I think they'll do better than expected this year. They won't be a playoff team or anything like that, but I think their record will be significantly better, and it could. I think their season this year is be in the conversation for a wild card. They'll come at the end of November, beginning of December, not get it, but sort of be in the conversation. And it would not shock me if they have another good off season next year that they could be in contention for playoff the following season.
I don't necessarily disagree, Dan. I agree that it won't be this year. I agree that they are certain they're building something. They're getting pieces in place. Obviously, they're missing the most important part. And that, I mean, me personally, I'm not a Jared Goff believer. I think he's just the Band-Aid, but it's the sort of thing that, like, once if they're able to land an established quarterback or somebody that we know can play, suddenly the Lions become very interesting, right? Because all of the surrounding pieces are kind of like Denver, right? The Denver Broncos. The defense was strong. They have some crazy good weapons in place with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and all those guys. And now all of a sudden Russell Wilson comes into the picture, and now the Broncos are like, okay, that's a legitimate team. I'm not saying Detroit is Denver, but you're right that they're absolutely building something there where if they get a competent signal caller in place, suddenly they become very interesting. To answer your question about who I'm most worried about in this year, it would be Minnesota. I'm always worried about Minnesota because they've had pieces in place to be dangerous for quite a while, and they just never can seem to quite get over that hump. But an offense with, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins is a very capable quarterback. I think he gets a lot of hate and a lot of people, like, he's kind of a little bit of a scapegoat, and he's much better than I think people realize as an NFL quarterback. Long term, and I know now we're just going around the whole horn, but long term, Justin Fields is a very talented quarterback. Whether or not he's going to be able to put it all together remains to be seen. Obviously, last year was kind of it wasn't great. It wasn't pretty by any means. But if he's able to take a year 2 leap, that's going to be very concerning for me as a Packers fan. Long term is whether or not the Bears can build. Now, I think their draft just set them back. Well, most of their draft was pretty solid, but the Velus Jones pick was, I don't know what happened there, but I think it's the sort of thing where we know that the clock is ticking on the Packers, right? We have whatever's left of Aaron Rodgers' window, and after that, we're probably going to have to press the reset button, where meanwhile, the Lions are building. The Bears might have a franchise quarterback in place. The Vikings, they're going to be kind of stuck in some sort of purgatory soon because Kirk Cousins probably isn't going to be the long-term answer either. So it's, the arrow's pointing up on the Packers, but we know that soon it's going to start pointing down where all the other teams are going to start nipping at the heels a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Bears are an interesting team. I think they know they had to tear it down, and obviously they're on the clock with their a young quarterback, but that isn't this sort of front officer's problem. They didn't pick him. So I think I've every confidence that Fields can be a franchise quarterback, but the problem is this team was good, but it wasn't good enough to get into the playoffs. So they're tearing everything down, and people look at the draft as if saying, well, that's a bit weird when you've got Fields, but they
Yeah,
need to build the team for what they want it built, not for necessarily what Fields needs it built. I think there's every chance this or these hires can be good hires, but I'm not convinced it's going to be on the Fields clock, if you will, because to do it properly, it's probably going to take another two solid off seasons, and they're literally laying the foundations at this
yep.
point. And by the time they've done that, you've got to pay Fields. So I'm not sure this is going to work out well for him, to be honest with you. So
I
I think it's going to be fascinating.
I agree, and I hope you're right. I don't want Field like that. That's the biggest nightmare as a Packers fan is that the Packers start to decline and the Bears start to come up. Right? We don't want that. But yeah, it's the Justin Fields thing is interesting because it's the sort of thing where we know Chicago has to get it right. Right? They have to develop him in a way that's fruitful for the future of their team, and they have to get the complementary picks and building and all the pieces around him. They have to get it right. On the flip side, we know that Justin Fields is talented and the talent is there. So now it's just on Chicago to can we turn him into that franchise player that we need him to be. So time will tell, right? It's just going to take some time to figure out if it's going to work out or if Green Bay can continue to celebrate for a few more years.
Yeah, I agree. And that just about wraps up the episode. Other than, do you have any content dropping over the next couple of days? What you want people to check out, or anything else you're involved with?
Yeah, absolutely. I am actually working currently. I'm going to be working most of today on. I don't know if you or anybody else plays best ball fantasy. It's like my greatest addiction as far as fantasy football goes. But I am working on my best ball draft rankings, if you will. They're tiers. It's a cheat sheet that people can use to, here's who I recommend drafting when. It's going to be chock full of draft strategy, draft philosophy, where you should be taking running backs and quarterbacks and receivers. And then, of course, there's going to be individual analysis of every single player that's in the cheat sheet that you can click on to understand how I'm feeling about them coming into the 2022 season. So working on the best ball version right now. And shortly after that will be redraft rankings, dynasty rankings. There's a lot that's coming down the line. So we're really excited, and I'm excited that fantasy football, we're 3 months away, so we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we definitely have. And everyone, please do check it out. As I say, I will post all Mikey's details in the community, and I just want to thank you for joining me today, Mikey.
Dan, this was so much fun. Like I said, best possible way to start a Friday morning. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on, and I hope you have an awesome weekend.
Yeah, same to you. Everyone, thanks for joining us. Please remember to like and share the video. It really does help us get out there. I already see a couple of likes on the video, so we thank you for your support. And until next time, let's talk sport, fans. Thanks for watching.